Shaped like a piece of roadkill, the island of Halmahera in eastern Indonesia is remarkable for its biodiversity, especially among its birds. Judith Schleicher and I were in Halmahera for the second supervision of the GEF finance project, which is executed by Burung Indonesia, the affiliate of BirdLife International. Thanks to PT Weather Bay Nickel, we were able to helicopter into the middle of the forest where we were going to spend a few days observing the birds, looking at human impacts, and getting to know a small part of the Lolobata block of the Aketajawe-Lolobata National Park. We were joined by David Pumiasa, who's the Burung Indonesia project manager, and also by Mr. Tabur, the National Park's new director. This was his first opportunity to visit the park. It wasn't long before we were flying over lush rainforest, and much of this was in an as yet unexploited part of a logging concession. The old logging roads were overgrown and eroded. It was one of these old logging roads that we were searching for, and there in the middle of the forest was an orange tarpaulin, and as soon as it was clear that we'd seen it, it was whisked away so that it didn't get caught in the rotors. We unpacked our gear and then went down to the small camp that had been prepared for us by National Park staff, and Budi, seen here in the blue, who was the project GIS specialist and also a mean cook. It was then time for Colin, our pilot, to leave us, with the expressed hope of coming back in 2 days to pick us up. This was rainforest, and it was also the rainy season, and so we shouldn't really grumble or be surprised that it rained very soon after he left. Cooking became close to impossible, and the little river that had run past our camp now swelled and swelled into a torrent. The next morning, though muddy and slippery underfoot, the rain had at least stopped, and we were able to go out along the logging roads to get some views of the endemic bird life. The first of these was the Goliath cuckoo, the largest cuckoo in the world, which grows to about 70 centimeters long. We saw this in groups of 3, 4, 5 birds chattering noisily to each other. Eastern Indonesia is justly famous for its large number of parrots, and we saw eclectus parrots, violet-necked lorikeets, chattering lories, which are endemic to the island, and a lot of others. We also saw some rather less attractive birds, even if they are endemic. This is the Halmahera cuckoo shrike, which in full colour would look sort of grey and black. We also saw the black eagle, which is not so rare, but still quite an impressive sight. And sitting on a branch waiting for prey is the blue and white kingfisher, another endemic. Something that made a real impression on us was that even though this was logged forest, away from the ridge tops, the forest looked pretty good condition. In order to investigate this further, we went off at right angles along a ridge into forest which we had to cut our way through. And having done 20-30 years of walking in the forests of Indonesia, I was struck that along the ridges that we chose to go along, there were no signs of humans ever having been there before us. So after 45 minutes of slogging up and down slopes, we took a break, peered into the canopy to see if we could see any birds, and shared some peanuts together. There was also the ritual of looking for leeches, which had crawled into shoes and between our toes.
Yes.
This one was caught before it could start sucking any blood, but not so the one that had lodged happily between two of Judith's toes. We couldn't allow ourselves too long a rest, so after a while we got on our feet again and started to walk home. We then explored the river just near the camp.
So it's the end of our second day here, start of our second night. We've seen a lot today. Haven't seen quite as much as we'd hoped. Didn't see the bird of paradise, the Wallace standard wing, and we didn't get very good views of the hornbill, which we'd hoped to do. But we've been satisfied with what we have seen. Some good endemics, some beautiful forest, and we've got a good team supporting us here, which is great. Now, about 6:15, and the cloud is coming down, and we're not sure whether we're going to be able to get the helicopter in here tomorrow morning to get us out. It may suddenly blow through and it will be clear tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock when Colin the pilot's expecting to get us, but at this point not feeling terribly optimistic.
Just as we were going to bed, we were called because the two local guides had been out with flashlights and had been able to catch two birds.
This is ivory-breasted pitta, one of the 24 endemic birds in the Halmahera.
And this shining monarch, also caught by hand, just plucked off its perch. The next morning was, contrary to my expectations, beautiful. The sky was clear and blue. So it was time to pack up, getting the ground ready for the helicopter. It was also time to release the two birds. First the shining monarch, and then it was time for the pitta. But then the peace of our little camp was shattered when Colin came back to pick us up. There was time for last-minute packing, storing and saying goodbyes, and then it was up into the air again and racing over the forest, with the trees almost close enough to touch. One of the birds that we didn't see at all during our walks was the white-crested cockatoo, another Halmahera endemic. But here in the bottom left and now the middle of this frame shows some of the 45 cockatoos that we saw on the flight back. Colin also took us to see a rather spectacular waterfall. Not so far from the Wedder Bay Nickel camp is a large block of limestone, and in certain places there are some magnificent large dolines. These are caves that have collapsed, their roof having tumbled down to the ground, and there's a river running through and among all these caves. A French expedition went there 20 years ago, and we're trying to find some money now to launch another expedition that would complete the mapping and exploration of the caves. New species have been found in them, and more surely is there to be found. And then we were back at the base camp. There was just time to have a quick snorkel over the coral reef, to do our packing, say our thank yous and goodbyes, and to go by speedboat over to the town of Wedder, where we started writing up our reports and preparing for meetings. There's some parts of our work which aren't quite as photogenic as others.